So in my last video, I talked about the best way to implement WebSDK via Launch. But there's one little detail I wanted to review first. That detail is actually an important part of the implementation, which is clearing the XDM object prior to sending the data. Now, I didn't have that in there before because, honestly, the way that data elements function is a little counterintuitive. So one might expect the data element to operate based on its scope, right? You set the global data element for the XDM variable and the global tag or the global XDM variable to none, right? That means it shouldn't store it. Well, what actually happens is it is stored, and we'll go over that. We'll go over why that is in a little bit, but I first want to review how to properly implement this using that clear XDM object checkbox, which is really, really important when you're conducting an implementation. So let's dive right in first, and then we'll talk a little bit about why the configuration is a little counterintuitive. So based on our last video, you might remember that we have to actually stack two different rule actions to ensure that the global XDM object is populated correctly. And that's the update variable object and also the XDM global object. What we're going to do is click on the update variable object. And if I want to clear the entire object, I'm going to click on this XDM parent variable and click on the checkbox clear existing value. Now the text below it says this will cause the field to be deleted before setting any values. This is basically like setting clear vars. We're clearing the variables out of the XDM object prior to resetting them to whatever we set them to in this update variable action. Now, this is actually going to help us send the values that we expect to send in our server call payload. Now, for those who have watched the previous video, this is literally all you need to know. You need to know to just click on this XDM object and clear existing value. If you want to get a little bit more specific, you can always go to more specific parameters. Like let's say you want to clear out the page view metric and go to, let's click on page views and clear that value. This is grayed out since I cleared out the parent object, but if I go back here, uncheck this, I can always go to page views and click on this checkbox. The extension is kind of convenient in that it doesn't let us kind of double clear that object and instead restricts us to clearing, only on the parent level. So if you're here to watch the video to understand how to clear that existing value, boom, done. Now, if the sole purpose of coming to this video was to figure out why your values were persisting between server calls or between rules, mission accomplished. You figured it out. Now you know to click on the clear variable checkbox. Problem solved. But I want to go into why this is a little counterintuitive. When we set a data element, we expect the data element to respect the scope that's selected. But that's not really what's happening when we're building these rules. In fact, it's carrying over these variables as though it's storing them in a cookie or in a global variable that it's trying to retrieve. Now, what's actually happening behind the scenes is kind of simple. What's actually happening is XDM is setting the object as the global variable. Now, this means that it is a variable that's accessible in the DOM. So if you actually go into the console, you can look at the physical XDM object, which means that no matter what scope you set in the data element, it's not going to make a difference because it's trying to retrieve it from this content.xdm variable. And this is the actual code of the extension. Personally, not a huge fan of that functionality, but that said, understanding why it works the way that it does will help us better execute on our implementations. So I hope this helps, and best of luck implementing. Thank you.